Hello everyone, good afternoon. For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. To begin, we begin in Saudi Arabia. That's where the summit of Arab and South American nations has opened just within the last few hours here. Now, the main focus of this two-day summit will be economic ties between both regions and global oil prices, which you will remember continue to drop under $50 a barrel. Now, Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro He was welcomed there at the Riyadh airport by the Saudi King Salman bin Abdulaziz. 21 Arab countries and 13 South American countries are taking part in the summit. The Ecuadorian President Rafael Correa is also in Riyadh for the summit there, where we see Ecuadorian President Rafael Correa. Venezuela and Ecuador, along with a number of other oil-producing countries, are seeking to stabilize the world price of oil at around $80 a barrel. The International Energy Agency, in its latest report, says oil prices should return to that level, but that it may take several years. Saudi Arabia has so far refused to cut production to boost prices. The FARC rebels in Colombia will stop all weapons purchases. Now, the revelation comes as peace talks between the rebels and the government enters a brief recess. The FARC's top leader, Timoleon Jimenez, known as Timoshenko, tweeted that weapon purchases had been halted the 30th of September. The revelation comes as the guerrilla urges the government to implement a truce ahead of a bilateral ceasefire to take place coming soon. Meanwhile, the ELN guerrilla published a video showing two soldiers they had detained earlier last month during clashes with the Colombian army. Now, the video shows the soldiers speaking with a red and black ELN flag, as we're seeing there. Although the guerrilla group also urges the government to enter peace talks with them. The ELN is the second largest armed rebel group in Colombia. Argentina's presidential candidates are preparing for televised debate on Sunday, which could be crucial ahead of the second round of voting. While Mauricio Macri claims a change is needed, Daniel Scioli is promising to keep the current welfare policies implemented by President Cristina Fernandez.
The Front for Victory's campaign in the lead up to the November 22 runoff seeks to remind Argentines of the dark track record neoliberalism had on the country last time it was in office, and has warned that if it returns to government, it will put an end to the progressive policies of the past decade. Mauricio Macri and the right-wing Cambiemos coalition has quickly cried foul, accusing the Front for Victory of running a fear campaign against them.
Don't listen to them. They want to fill you with fear, again, because that's all they can offer. Fear, fear, and more fear, because they can't offer you hope.
The Front for Victory argues that talking about the Cambiemos coalition's potential neoliberal cutbacks is fair game and is absolutely factual.
The ones generating fear are those who want to introduce tariffs on public universities and who voted against free education as recently as last week. Macri generates fear when he says through his spokesman in the energy field that energetic sovereignty is not important to a nation. Like he said today, this means that to him, political sovereignty is not important.
The owners of fear in Argentina are the neoliberalists, because they have terrorized society from the supremacy of their oligopolistic and monopolistic media. But you only have to look back at Argentina's recent history, where right-wing neoliberalism expresses fear through the means of unemployment, poverty, currency devaluation, and wage cuts.
Opinions on the streets of Buenos Aires in relation to the supposed fear campaign are mixed.
Those who install fear in the population are those in the opposition, saying that we are going to run out of dairy supplies or that we will have to import grains.
What I'm scared of is the people who are governing us now. Those who come to power next give me hope.
Argentina's monopolised mass media, headed by the giant Clarín Group, who is a rabid opponent of anything minutely related to the Front for Victory, have echoed Macri's complaints of a supposed dirty campaign of fear across the hundreds of television, radio, print and online services it owns across the country. Must be said that Macri's complaint has struck a chord with many Argentines who mostly consume anti-government media. But Macri lacks the massive grassroots activism which the Front for Victory has, with thousands of volunteers busily door-knocking and walking the streets, spreading the word on what neoliberalism plans to do here in Argentina if it manages to get back into the pink house. Leo Politico, Telesur, Buenos Aires.
To Central America now, Guatemalan health workers are protesting outside the presidential palace in Guatemala City. They were joined by citizens who launched a hunger strike in support of the workers. Now, the health workers and the citizens are demanding better infrastructure and more resources to improve medicine supplies and equipment. At the same time, a public transport strike is adding pressure to the government, which has been slow to react. Meanwhile, in neighboring Honduras, health workers there are also on strike. The workers have not received any raise in their wages since the year 2009, hence the reason for the strike. Now, despite the strike, emergency services are still functioning in hospitals and community centers. And for more on those two stories we're covering in Central America now, we turn to our Central American correspondent, Gerardo Torres. Hello there, Gerardo. Let's start in Guatemala. Let's start in Honduras. What developments can you tell us about in Honduras?
Here in Honduras, public workers have had different assemblies since yesterday and today, preparing for a general strike because they haven't received any increase of salary since the coup d'etat of 2009. We have to also say that the prices of the basic needs have almost doubled since 2009, but there has been no rise. There could be a strike. There's already a strike in the public health sector, but this could extend to other public workers. The government has assured that there will be an increase in the salary. We're talking about there's around $300. It could increase to $350 a month. But workers have assured that they will stop the assemblies until the government has signed an official document.
Quickly, what can you tell us about the situation there in the neighboring country, Guatemala?
Well, what happened in Guatemala is similar to what is happening in Honduras. There are not the correct conditions to work. There is no improvement in the infrastructure. But there is also a corruption scandal that has been investigated since middle of this year. After the investigation of the Customs Service, there was also an accusation of corruption in the Social Security Institute. But now there's a new investigation in all the public health sector that has demonstrated that there has also been corruption. So workers are demanding an increase in their salary, a improvement in the infrastructure, and also the punishment of those who were part of Otto Pérez Molina's government in the public sector that were involved in the corruption scandal.
All right, Gerardo Torres reporting there on two different countries in Central America. Gerardo, thank you. And we move on now. As many Central Americans are looking for more opportunities abroad, migration is becoming a major issue as many of them try to cross from Mexico into the United States. Our correspondent Clayton Kahn now with more from Mexico.
The freight rails here outside of Mexico City increasingly lack the once common Central American migrant. What was once their primary means to travel northward now seems to be off limits.
We are observing the situation of Plan Frontera Sur that has made most of our brother and sister migrants who normally would ride the train scared because of extortion, so they are now seeking other routes to get up there.
In July 2014, Mexico's President Enrique Peña Nieto announced the Southern Border Program. The new policy that Peña Nieto claims is to defend migrant rights came after Mexico faced large numbers of Central American migrants in 2014.
The Southern Border Program has two purposes. One, to protect and defend the human rights of migrants that transit through Mexico. And two, to get to the international crossings in order so as to increase development and security in the region.
Rights defenders say the program is the opposite. Since it started operating, more than 600 immigration agents have carried out over 22,000 searches, and Mexico is now deporting 70% more migrants than the same time last year. They also say the program forces migrants to take even more dangerous routes.
What the Southern program has done is re-victimize migrants, those that leave Central America, those brothers and sisters who are looking for better opportunities in life or who are feeling violent, have faced a security siege in Mexico and a control apparatus that criminalizes them and turns them into victims of migration policies.
This systematic victimization hits hard for thousands of Central American migrants who seek Mexico for refugee status, rather than the historic pattern of transit. Some argue that Mexico's decade-long drug war has spilled into their home countries, forcing them to leave.
They were going to kill me, my family, and they killed my cousin. They threatened me, and so that's why I want to go.
According to rights defenders, there are 11 new migrant routes that transit Mexico through territory controlled by organized crime. They say the number of human rights violations are dramatically increasing. Clayton Candela Sur, Tultitlán, Mexico.
A delegation of Cuban representatives is meeting U.S. government officials to continue advancing on renewed diplomatic ties between both countries. The representatives from both nations will analyze the progress made in the past months and will continue discussing issues such as financial restrictions, the U.S. blockade against Cuba, and new steps to move forward. The Fight for $15 campaign, the movement to raise the federal minimum wage in the United States, is gaining new steam in that country. Coming up, we have more on activist plans to achieve a living wage for low-income workers.
Discover Latin America and the world in our programs. Telesur Reports, The Real USA, the stories behind the tweets. Ataman, Lives, Know Your Body, Open Files. Exposing the conflicts that affect our people. Compelling personal stories and the most controversial events. See it all on telesurtv.net in English. Telesur. Wherever the news, you'll be there.
Day by day, they're in the street with one mission: change the world through their actions. This is a different type of program, a conversation. The perspective you won't find in traditional media can be found on The Laura Flanders Show. Watch it on telesurtv.net/English. Telesur, wherever the news, you'll be there.
We need to understand the world we live in. We require news with critical points of view, thorough analysis, and social commitment. This information is vital to think, to understand, and to change. The world demands a new perspective. telesurtv.net/English. Wherever the news, you'll be there.
Fast food and low-wage workers are protesting in 500 cities across the United States to demand dignified wages. Now, the Fight for 15 campaign is to demand a $15 federal minimum wage and more union rights. According to organizers, the strikes and protests also aim to catch the attention of candidates in the 2016 presidential race and put pressure on them to put workers' rights and a minimum wage hike on this agenda for this election. Organizers will also have voter registration drives to encourage as many as 64 million eligible low-wage workers to vote. There continue with more now on the developments. We turn to our correspondent, Noor Harazin.
Situation in the West Bank continue to escalate for now the 6th week in a row. Palestinian medical sources reported that there were several attacks around cities in the West Bank, and one attack Israeli police killed one Palestinian and injured 2 others, including a child. He is 14 years old. Meanwhile, here in the Gaza Strip, the situation is calm comparing to what is happening in the West Bank. However, after a rocket was fired from Gaza yesterday, the residents are fearing that the Palestinian resistance groups will escalate and engage with the Israeli side in a new operation.
Meanwhile, in Washington now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with President Barack Obama in the United States. Despite the wide condemnation against Israeli actions that have sparked tensions in the West Bank and Gaza, Netanyahu said he wanted peace with Palestine. On Monday, the Syrian army said successful operations have inflicted huge losses against armed groups there, according to an army spokesman. During a televised statement, the Syrian army has been carrying out operations in different areas of the country against terrorists in the suburbs of Aleppo, Homs, and Latakia, as well as many areas in north and eastern Syria. Hundreds of Afghans in Ghazni protested against the killing of 7 members of the mainly Shia Hazara ethnic group. Among the victims were 3 women and 1 child. Also, about 80 people were killed in clashes between rival groups of Taliban militants. The protesters demanded that the government ensure security for all residents of the country. Just one day after his detention, Egypt's military has freed prominent rights defender and investigative journalist Hossam Bakat after calls for his release from the United Nations. The journalist was arrested by military intelligence on Sunday morning and was charged with publishing false news, harming national interests, and disseminating information that disturbs public peace. British Prime Minister David Cameron has outlined his 4 goals for reforming the UK's membership of the EU, which includes restrictions on benefits for people coming into the UK. Now, Cameron says that Britain faces a huge decision on whether or not to stay in the EU. The referendum is promised before the end of the year 2017. Anti-EU campaigners say the talks are a gimmick. Cameron made it clear that if negotiations succeed, he will campaign enthusiastically to keep UK in the EU.
Campaign to keep Britain inside a reformed European Union. I'll campaign for it with all my heart and all my soul, because that will be unambiguously in our national interest. But if we can't reach such an agreement, and if Britain's concerns were to be met with a deaf ear, which I don't believe will happen, then we will have to think again about whether this European Union is right for us. And as I've said before, I rule nothing out.
The Commission considers the Prime Minister's letter as the beginning, not the end of the negotiation. And as President Juncker has repeatedly stated, we stand ready to work for a fair deal with Britain that is also fair for all the other member states.
Eurogroup finance ministers arrived in Brussels for talks on various agendas, including the implementation of a banking union. The ministers will also discuss common financing and an action plan on building a capital markets union. Now, this initiative aims to strengthen and integrate further capital markets to provide new sources of funding for business. Pope Francis was greeted by cheering crowds in Tuscany earlier this morning as he began a day-long pastoral visit to Prato and Florence. Now, while addressing the crowds, Pope Francis departed from his pre-written notes there to pay homage to the victims of a fire in a textile factory that occurred in the year 2013. Now, Prato has a population of 200,000. Up to 1,000 people are believed to be working in the area illegally. Spanish international and Porto goalkeeper Iker Casillas was awarded the Cross of the Order of Merit for sport for his achievements. Now, Casillas was presented with the award by Spain's Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy. He was team captain when Spain won the World Cup in 2010 and the European Championship in 2008 and 2012. During the ceremony, Casillas said he would like to be remembered not only for his sports achievements, but because he has always been a person that tried to help society. Finally now, scientists studying Egypt's pyramids have found what they call thermic anomalies. Now, the researchers from Egypt, France, Canada, and Japan say that a few blocks of the pyramids are as much as 6 degrees Celsius warmer than the rest. Now, they're still unsure why and how this may be, but they think the pyramids could have been designed to keep certain areas cooler than others. The discovery could shed some new light on ancient architecture. That's what we're covering. Plenty more on all of those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. Remember to join us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Weddle. We'll see you back here in just a few hours.